It is time to ask for a presidential pardon for Marcus Garvey and the setting up of a Marcus Garvey employment, training, and placement program based upon the economic teachings of Booker T. Washington to train the next generation on how to rebuild the infrastructure of the United States of America. A pardon for Marcus Garvey, a presidential pardon for Marcus Garvey.
Most of you, I think, assume that this is still the Negro problem. But you must be warned that it is not wholly or mainly that now. That the reason that it is not is because of the fundamental changes now spreading over the whole world. Whereas in the 18th century the world thought that progress and emancipation were coming from popular education and universal suffrage, we know now that more fundamental than these important rights is the economic organization of the world. That is, the way in which the labor of human beings is organized to satisfy human needs. This question is so fundamental that all other questions of political power, of education, and human happiness depend upon it.
That unquestionably I am an American, born there, my father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America.
But my favorite play is called Catch the Tiger, that deals with Marcus Garvey and Edgar Hoover. As a young man, the first major case that he had, they sent him from Washington, D.C. to New York to neutralize Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, because they felt that Marcus Garvey at that particular time, because he wasn't born in the United States and had traveled a lot, he had a better international understanding of most of our local African-American leaders at that time. As long as they could keep the African-American leaders thinking about what's happening in the United States and not connecting things on the international basis, they were no danger to the capitalistic economic system, right? So Hoover, he come to New York, he come with a plan. So what his plan was this: first of all, he had to know the inside outs of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. So Hoover, he get this mulatto doctor in Harlem, and he put him inside of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and he give him the code name Confidential Informant Number 800. Really? Yeah. And so while there, right, this particular individual, because he was well educated, he was able to move up into the inner circle of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. So he was able to know where all of the weaknesses and the strengths of the organization, where all of the potential fractions was. So he reported all of this back to Edgar Hoover. And so when Edgar Hoover studied all of his information, he come up with the concept that he kept intact throughout his life and even today. It was called the concept of infiltration and disinformation. In other words, he would infiltrate a particular organization, making sure that the person that he infiltrated, that he used, was well educated so he could move up into the inner circle of the organization. And then through the concept of infiltration and finding out who the major players was, the potential fractions, he come up with the concept of disinformation to play them off against each other to keep them from achieving their major goal. And probably the perfect example in which this worked is what he was able to do with the Nation of Islam and create the fractions of Malcolm X and Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because he had a former FBI agent who was still an FBI agent, who had been in the Nation of Islam for almost 20-some years, and at that particular time he was a national secretary who actually led the hit team to assassinate Malcolm X. And so Hoover developing the concept of infiltration and disinformation when they developed the FBI, because at that particular time they had just had the Justice Department. He brought this concept and he developed the counterintelligence program using the same concept. The counterintelligence program became COINTELPRO, that came out when the Freedom of Information Act that exposed all of this. So I guess the reason that this is my favorite play, because it's so important to understand that they still use this concept today. This is how they were able to break up the groups like the Crips and the Bloods into so many different warring fractions by using Hoover's
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer, yes.
Celebration of Marcus Garvey's birthday. May the peace and blessings of a life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family.
Africa for the African, home and abroad. One God, one aim, one destiny. Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. Where's the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country, his army, his navy? I could not find them anywhere, so I declared I will help make them.
J. Edgar Hoover, sitting at his desk, reading the report on Marcus Garvey's speech. Agent James Amos stands near the desk.
Is this word for word of his last speech?
Yes.
This is a dangerous man. Damn radical, ungrateful, and un-American.
Marcus Garvey is dealing with long-standing issues of Negro injustice.
What Negro injustice? Their lives are far better than any place in the world. Better than Africa, the West Indies, or South America.
They are American citizens and entitled to certain inalienable rights.
They have to learn first to control themselves. Look at Elaine, Arkansas. Negro right, property loss. Over 200 deaths. Thousands of people hurt. Chicago, 65 deaths. Thousands left homeless. Property damage east of St. Louis. Hundreds of lives lost and thousands left homeless.
Yes, but some of these riots were not caused by people like Marcus Garvey, but white folks not wanting Negroes to get jobs.
He is a radical. A lot of these Negro radicals are out there to breed problems. I don't know which is worst, radicals or communists.
Yes, the communist. But Garvey's no communist.
And how do you know that?
Well, he's into developing businesses. Negro business. He set up a network of businesses owned and staffed by Negroes, providing goods and services to Negro customers without relying on white management, staff, or customers. Don't you know his philosophy?
I know he's somebody who can cause us a lot of trouble. Newspapers like the Negro World are serving the same purpose as magazines like that communist Messenger magazine, feeding information to arouse the Negro community. We had over 50 race riots in 1919 caused by propaganda coming from the radicals and communists.
Yes, the Red Summer. The returning military veterans fought for their country. They deserved more. Even Attorney General Palmer said that never again will Negroes tamely submit to violence and intimidation.
White men also fought for their country and came home from the war to find Negroes in their jobs. Their reaction is understandable. We don't need a voice like Garvey to add to the mix.
I agree.
The tiger. That's what I'm going to call him. A fearsome and efficient predator. The tiger. Did you know that the tiger is one of the few animals on Earth that has absolutely no fear of man?
Marcus, I just received the report from the Black Star Line.
I'll walk up the books.
The overall donations have doubled from last week's count. Oh, one other thing. I heard from Bishop McGuire he was successful in getting the Archbishop of the Syrian Church to support and ordain him. He wants you to mention it at the meeting tonight.
About time that we erase the image of a white God from the minds of our people.
An African God for an African people. Oh, I understand that the British and French have inquired about your activities in Liberia and your plans for moving some of the UNIA members there.
That's to be expected. Britain and France are just like the United States when it comes to black people. Things may get a little tough.
I'm a tough lady, Marcus. I'm not some floor mat that someone can just walk over. My father taught me to be strong. Marcus, I am surprised at you. You know my history. I had to run my father's business when he was sick, and I ran it very well. I can take the pressure. You're the one that's not focusing. You appointed John to the position of manager of the Manufacturers Association, and he has no background at all. He has a third-grade education. The association is where our organization gets most of its funding.
I know you mean well, but I'm going to ask you to respect my wishes.
I respect your wishes. But Marcus, this is a problem. John has no experience, and he has a bad attitude. And John is not the only one. Look at Milton over in Productions. No experience, no education. Edwin working with the Black Star Line. No experience at all.
I know what is best for the organization.
You don't seem to know what is best with these kind of appointments, Marcus. These appointments you're making.
I have allowed you to run the women's page of the Negro World to say whatever you want without interference, and you should give me the same courtesy.
Edgar Hoover. Glad to meet you, sir. It's good to see that we still have some truly loyal Americans in the Negro community. Have a seat.
I love America. God bless America. And I want to do the right thing.
Marcus Garvey is a menace to the welfare of the United States. He has the potential to arouse ill feeling between the races.
He is an insult to the good and loyal colored people of America.
But you supported him. You gave him rather large donations.
I wanted to see if he was the real thing.
The real thing.
The savior.
Our people are always looking for a savior.
I thought that he would be good for all of the people. But that didn't apply to me because I'm a light-skinned Negro. He's looking for dark-skinned followers like Agent Amos over here.
If that's all he is, why do all these people listen to his rhetoric?
He preaches freedom.
Lots of people preach freedom.
He has a way with words that creates disharmony among the races. Marcus Garvey stirs up trouble.
You're right about that. Radicals like him caused the Red Summer riots in 1990.
If you betrayed Marcus Garvey, how do we know that you will not betray us?
I am not betraying Marcus Garvey. I am supporting our people.
Can we trust you?
How do I know I can trust you?
You don't.
That's not an answer. I'm putting my life on the line.
I'm sure he wouldn't be here if you didn't think that we could trust him. I'm thankful that we have a truly loyal American who realizes how dangerous Marcus Garvey is.
Yes, we are.
What I need, that is, what the government needs, is someone who is already part of Garvey's organization. Study it from the inside. Determine the weaknesses and strengths of the organization.
Get close to Garvey.
Make him trust you.
Make
Make him depend on you.
become his friend.
I want you to be very careful, and don't you underestimate the tiger.
Who, sir?
That's Garvey's code name for your reports. The tiger.
That's a colorful name.
Can I rely on you?
Yes, sir, Mr. Hoover.
I don't want you to come down here anymore.
And don't contact us. We will contact you.
Agent Amos is your only contact. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Don't talk to anyone else about your role.
Okay.
You'll also need a code name for the reports. Your code name is 800.
told you want to talk to me about Marcus Garvey.
That's right. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule.
I will do whatever I can.
What can you tell us about Marcus Garvey's business operation?
You got to understand, I'm no longer in the inner circle. I don't have the access I had after that convention business.
Their decision to impeach you from your position in the UNIA was wrong.
Spikes, right? Garvey thought I was passing information to Dr. Du Bois and A. Philip Randolph. No.
What is the situation with Black Star Line? How does the money from the stockholders end up in Garvey's pocket?
It doesn't.
Garvey is not lining his pockets with the money that was supposed to be going to the organization?
And he lives very modestly. It's not so much Garvey as it is those that he got around him. That's the den of thieves. They smiled in his face, shaking his hand with one hand and stealing with the other. I think he knew about the stealing, but he didn't know what to do with it.
We have evidence he is stealing. If Marcus Garvey were indicted for stealing money from the UNIA, would you be willing to tell us what you know about how he handles the funds from the UNIA?
Garvey is not careful about handling funds. There's no difference between his personal expenses and the UNIA expenses.
What about the account?
I mean, he wouldn't know the difference.
He can only record what they give him.
Meaning what?
Meaning there are other financial documents that Garvey keeps to himself.
We need your help, Reverend Easton.
I'll do whatever I can.
And that's all we're asking.
Marcus Garvey is a very complex man. Now, I have testified at too many hearings and just watched the bad guy walk away sometime without even a slap on the wrist.
This will be different. Agent Amos said that you have some documents about Marcus Garvey fundraising activities that will help us get Garvey.
Promise me that you will get Garvey and I will give you the documents.
I promise. We need more loyal Americans like yourself.
And loyal law enforcement like you. And you, Agent Amos.
Thank you, Reverend Easton.
You know, I like the potential of the UNIA. That's why I got involved. I introduced him to some of the leading pastors in all. Because I liked what Garvey had to say. And then he goes and embarrasses me in front of my congregation with that impeachment mess at the convention. I thought he was a friend. Now, he was like
A savior?
not quite.
Is it possible for you to give us the documents for safety?
No, the documents are in different places. I don't think you would understand the documents without me.
Well, let us worry about it.
I am worried about that.
Don't worry, Reverend Easton. Agent Amos has been around the block a few times. We know about your speaking engagement in New Orleans and wish you the best. It takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing.
I want to do what's right as a servant of God.
I hope you have a wonderful time in New Orleans. Be careful.
Careful.
Well, you're one of our most important witnesses against Marcus Garvey. You know, if they found out, these people...
What people are you talking about? Does Garvey know about my testimony?
No. But some of Garvey's henchmen have a history of violence and vengeance toward their enemies.
Vengeance is mine, thus says the Lord.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's good. But still keep your eyes open. They may try to intimidate you, so don't you take any chances.
I don't think they'll bother you because you are a preacher. And you do have a large following.
Gentlemen, have no fear. I put my faith and trust in the Lord.
I came down here to make sure that you are out of the way when they spring the trap on Marcus Garvey. I know you
Not in the way you think.
What other way is it? He is a married man.
What are you trying to say, Henrietta?
I am saying uncontrolled emotions are a dangerous thing.
Marcus came to see you. He thought that there was a spy in his organization.
There are plenty of spies in the UNIA and plenty of killers. But the intelligence community in London believes that Reverend Easton might have been killed by someone working in the United States government with the intent of framing Marcus Garvey. Now, it backfired on them when they couldn't tie Garvey to the murder. They're in the process now of putting pressure on the Liberian government and forcing them to go back on their agreement to settle some of Garvey's followers in Africa.
But they already promised Marcus a section of land for settlement of some of the UNI members there.
I know.
You know what?
I know what I need to know.
Henrietta, as a friend, I need to know the truth.
The land promised to the UNIA will instead be given to an international corporation and the money to make it work. Now do you understand what you are up against?
Which corporation?
Firestone Rubber Corporation.
Does Marcus know?
I don't think so.
He'll be devastated.
Devastated? Amy, you don't seem to be understanding what I'm telling you. Marcus Garvey is too dangerous to be around. Come on, even the black leadership in America wants him to go down. Most of the Negroes in Harlem now work in Garvey's businesses and have now left their white bosses. Look, I don't want you to put your life in danger because you think you owe this cat something. Look, do you honestly think they'll let Marcus Garvey or anyone move black people to Africa? Come on, not as long as they still need their cheap labor. They will always need some helpless people to exploit.
It's been a long time since I heard you talk like that on the shooting. They are trying to connect Marcus to the three men. Have you ever heard Marcus mention any of these three men?
No.
If something happens to Marcus,
Nothing is going to happen to
look,
Marcus.
all I'm saying is that if Marcus goes to prison,
Nothing is going to happen to Marcus.
you better open your eyes and wake up. Look, Marcus got enemies coming from him from all sides. The Justice Department, the colored leadership, the British and the French government. He's being followed everywhere he goes, and they're following you too. Look, that man, sitting at the far table with his bullet bulging his jacket, look around. That's one of Hoover's boys. That's why I wanted to meet you here. It's hard for a white person to hide amongst a whole lot of black people. Black people watching too. That black guy over there with the white socks, probably working for Agent Amos.
Are they following you or me?
Both of us.
The scene crossfades to J.A. Rogers and A. Philip Randolph.
Crabs in a bucket, just like Marcus said.
He brought it on himself.
How can you say that?
Provisional President of Africa. Wasting poor people's money, the meeting with the Klan. What can you expect?
Jealousy and all this infighting while our people still suffer? I covered the trial. They framed him, and they'll frame you next.
He's his own worst enemy.
Don't you mean the Committee of 8 is his worst enemy?
I am not part of that.
They're coming for you too, Asa.
I
You
know.
can believe that.
I know. And I will be ready. Marcus Garvey's way is not my way.
The aim of the Negro should be national, not segregated unity.
We must fight against those who divide our people. We must organize around solid plans, not foolish talk and slogans, getting rich off the misery of our people.
Marcus is not in this for the money. He's in it to help our people. I knew that when I first heard him speak. Such passion, such love for our people. You heard the same thing, Asa. That's why you support him.
I was inspired by what Marcus had to say about the slaughter of our people during the East St. Louis riots. Over 200 of our people killed in the riots, and our leaders making the same speeches while our people are beaten, lynched, and burned. In the midst of all these fine speeches, Marcus said, "This is no time for fine words,
but time to lift one voice against the savagery of a people who claim to be the dispensers of democracy. The others oppose him for personal reasons. What is your reason, Mason? You should have found a way to work with Marcus."
I wish I could. But I have my own ideas, which are better.
Hoover is one.
How absolutely wonderful. I want to first and foremost just thank the cast for outstanding performances. Again, the material is so close to me, and to be quite frank, I'm not always certain how my family's legacy is going to be interpreted. And so I just have to say this is just an absolutely breathtaking and honorable rendition of a very small part of his impact and influence. But thank you all so much. I'm elated and happy and so glad to be here. So I actually live here in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, California. And again, my grandfather, Marcus, had two sons, Uncle Junior and my dad. And for those of you who have been following in terms of what's been transpiring with my family, our Uncle Junior has passed away. He did pass away this year. And so my dad, Dr. Julius Garvey, is the last, remaining and surviving son of Marcus Garvey. And so it's just so timely that this particular production came out, because as it was referenced here, tomorrow is the opening day for Judas and the Black Messiah. And so the correlation in terms of, again, this particular group taking a snapshot of this aspect of Garvey's life, and then we see this playing out with Fred Hampton tomorrow in terms of the film. I was very fortunate to have Macro give myself and my father advanced screening of the film. And as I told Charles, from the moment the opening credits opened till the moment that the closing credits ran, I was crying, but it was sobbing. And it was this sort of intergenerational racial trauma that all came to a head in watching it play out in Technicolor. And so if anyone hasn't seen the film yet, or has the opportunity tomorrow to see it, please do, because the work that you've done here tonight absolutely dovetails. And when you see how it is recreated in that release, there are so many similarities. I mean, literally the verbiage, there's some of the verbiage from tonight, just because, again, I saw the movie, and you're going to be astounded at the parallels and the close proximity of the tactics, as was pointed out, from the 20s that literally played right back again into the 60s. Being in Jamaica, when my father took us to St. Anne's to see where his father, my grandfather, came from. And so, you start to get a sense based on the work that he did, the printing work and the ability to start to lay out a newspaper. So this notion of how is it that Garvey had this widespread impact, it was really understanding media. And at the time, the major media platform being the newspaper, we have to fast forward and look now at the other media platforms that are there to help to amplify the message. And so it should come as no surprise that my grandfather was an apprentice when it came to printing, and that he should have had mastery over how to use the written word and the spoken word in terms of being able to transform a moment. And I do like that it's qualified as this ability for a man to take a moment and to transform it into a movement. And it was done so well from my grandfather's standpoint, and really homage to my grandmother. It was interesting that one of the questions came up about the influence of the two Amys. And the other day, my dad and I were talking, and we always talk about different storylines in terms of how do we see Marcus's story being told. And I'm like, Daddy, I always wanted to tell the story from the perspective of my grandmother. I'm like, if we're trying to capture a sense of relatability, it's, what happens when the man is removed from a prominent position within the movement, and how does that woman, as that partner, as that helpmate, step in to really carry on that torch? And I just think it's the story of Amy, and maybe I'm biased and I am told that I look like her from my dad, but it's the story of Amy that I've always felt was the fresh, new, untold story of Marcus Garvey, not to take away from obviously my granddad, but if I was to ever see a movie about Marcus Garvey, I think, as tonight's production showed, the role of the two Amys, but of course my grandmother, I think there's an untold story there that audiences so deserve to have a better snapshot of. And what my dad has always told me about his father is that people would be surprised at the kind of dad that he was, the kind of dad that Marcus Garvey was. Because remember, if we're looking at the timeline, my father, Julius, was born in 1933. So when we're looking at this timeline in terms of the deportation, obviously my father was born after that. And so this notion of Uncle Junior, who was 2 years older than my father, so 1931 and 1933, this is the family man where Garvey takes a different role. And something that my dad tells me also is that people would be surprised at how spiritual Marcus Garvey was. And that's why in the commentary in the chat, I said Africa as a state of mind. It was never, or at least my understanding from my dad, from his father, it was that Africa was a state of being. When we speak about Black excellence, when we speak about Black beauty, when we speak about all things that are powerful, that are Black, it wasn't about a landmass per se. It was a symbol of the landmass. It's a symbol of the flag, but it's a state of mind. And I think my grandfather so understood the power of the mind to really emphasize freedom. And what does freedom mean? And so I wouldn't be so fixated on the sort of physicality. Did he make it to Africa? He didn't make it to Africa. He had an Africa state of mind which transcended any journey or any, geography, so to speak. He understood the power and the beauty of Blackness. And to be able to step into Black power, Black beauty, Black excellence, I'm really proud. So yeah, I got a great granddad, great grandma, great daddy.
It is time to ask for a presidential pardon for Marcus Garvey and the setting up of a Marcus Garvey employment, training, and placement program based upon the economic teachings of Booker T. Washington to train the next generation on how to rebuild the infrastructure of the United States of America. A pardon for Marcus Garvey, a presidential pardon for Marcus Garvey. Please check out my 2 new books up on Amazon. The Charles Kipling National Theater Company is how to put together a national Black history theater company situated in 24 areas of the United States of America with a center point in the Mississippi Delta. And the other book is The Meme Factor, which discussed the secret identity of the descendants of the chattel slaves of America.